Alright, we are back with a new video, and today we'll be breaking down what, in my opinion, is the top 10 greatest Survivor players in history. Now, I know that I haven't gone into as much detail on previous Survivor seasons as some other channels out there that talk about this show, but I figured today would be a great time to rectify that, and what better way to do that than to look at the past and look at some of the all-time greats to play this game. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. Now, with there being over 600 people who have played this game, you would think it'd be very hard to narrow down who the all-time greats are, but I think most people are able to narrow it down pretty well, as these people have really distinguished themselves from the rest of the pack, really made an impact on their seasons, and I'm proud to be able to talk about them. So at number 10, the 10th greatest Survivor player of all time, for me, is Nora Salmon from Island of the Idols. Now, I know a lot of people rag on Nora's IOI game as she didn't win at the end of the day, but deep down, there's a ton of merit that people just don't talk about. I mean, look at all the people she outlasted on that season. Molly, Chelsea, Jack, Jamal. Heck, she even outlasted the great Lauren Ashley Beck. So clearly she was doing something right by making it much further in the game than all these great players out there who know the game, are game bots, and are social butterflies. The fact that Nora was able to get to the end of the game when those people didn't immediately puts her into strong contention. And she knew Dean was the real threat at the end of the day, thus causing her to send him into fire at the final four. Now, people have criticized this move, but I think it's brilliant. If Dean loses the fire making challenge, he goes home and goes to the end against much stronger competition. She can claim that she cut the biggest threat in the game, but even by Dean winning, she painted Dean as a dependent on twists and advantages, really undermining his jury chances and making it so that he couldn't win the game either. Now, it's just a shame that the jury couldn't see her own master play, handing the win over to Tommy, who is widely seen as the most boring winner in Survivor history. The fact that Nora was able to make so many great moves during her season and really take down who I consider to be a massive threat in Dean is enough to make her number 10 on this list. Now we're moving on to number 9, and we're jumping back to old school Survivor. Now, I know a lot of people think of people like Richard Hatch, Boston Rob, Tina Wesson when they think of old school Survivor. And of course, they're all great players in their own right for all various reasons, but I think there's one player that people are simply overlooking. And here at number 9, we have from Survivor Africa, Frank Garrison. Now, I think a lot of people overlook Frank because on the surface, he's just your typical older person who has a military background, is a bit strict when it comes to the way the camp is run. In a lot of ways, he feels like Rudy, and people love Rudy, but people don't seem to remember Frank as much. But I think what makes Frank really special is that he, along with T-Bird, were the first people to ever vote out their own original tribe member after a tribe swap. Remember, Survivor Africa was the first season to have a tribe swap, and before then, tribal lines dictated everything. We've seen this in the post-merge play out in Borneo and Outback, where the original tribe that has the numbers after the merge simply begong each other. But Frank was able to see past that. He recognized that just because you started off on a tribe with someone doesn't mean that you shouldn't be looking at them as a threat and someone to be taken out. And he saw that with Silas, who really dominated a lot of their early Samburu tribe. Frank was really at the bottom, and when it came time to make a tribe swap, I think most people would have taken that to just stick along tribal lines, go to a tie, and then use previous votes or the survival quiz in order to dictate the action. He had seen what happened to Carl when he went to a tie as well. He lost that quiz and went home. So when it came time for this new game-changing opportunity, Frank immediately saw the opportunity to strike. And through that, he teamed up with the original Baram members to throw the challenge and blindside Silas in an epic fashion, taking out one of the biggest players in that season. And for that, Frank is such a game changer that he has to be one of the greatest players to ever play. And obviously, he was able to get to the merge despite being seen as this older gentleman, despite being at odds with people like Brandon and the other Gen Xers from that time. It's just really incredible how Frank was able to see and change the game, which people have never seen before up to that point. So because of that, I have to give Frank all my respect, and he's here at number 9. Now we're moving on to number 8, and we're jumping a bit forward now to Survivor Samoa, which is widely seen as the Russell Hantz show, but considering this person was aligned with Russell Hantz, you could say that this person was second billing. And here we have Ben Browning. Now, like I said, Russell Hantz was the main force on Samoa, but Russell Hantz was able to align with Ben. Now, the fact that Ben was able to gain Russell's trust so early in the game really speaks to Ben's social game and how great he was at building one-on-one bonds with people. He voted correctly at the first True Tribals of the season, really showing how attentive and aware he was of what was happening on the tribe, being side by side by Russell. And in addition to his great social reads, he was also a fierce competitor in challenges. I mean, I think it really says something when he was duking it out in Smurgan Brawl, really giving it his all. And he was just so amazing in that challenge that Jeff realized that it wouldn't be fair if he stayed in the challenge. And so for the first time in Survivor history, Jeff had to remove someone from the challenge, because if they didn't, then Ben would have run the table, because he was dominating that challenge, really showing people who is boss. And I think that really speaks to his heart and his drive. And that's what I look for in Survivor players, the heart and the drive to compete. And while he was voted out third in the game, I think that really speaks to how great he is as a player. The fact that people saw how determined he was to play. The fact that people had to pull him from challenges to restrain his ability to really dominate the game. And the fact that he was so good that the producers had to step in and prevent him from further dominating the game really speaks to how great he is as a player. Can't deny that he's one of the all-time greats, so he's here at number 8. Now we're moving on to number 6, and we're jumping now to Modern Survivor. And while this person only played a couple years ago, they've already established themselves as a legend. And how can we not have a list of the greatest players of all time without Jacob Durwin? I mean, Jacob really played hard in his time on Ghost Island, where we see him right away go hunting for idols, really thinking outside the box over where they could be, even looking in the tribe's jar of rice. I mean, who else would have thought of that? I mean, we then see him utilize Ghost Island to the best of his ability, successfully baiting Navidi to send him to Ghost Island first before anyone else can. And we see him go over there and get the legacy advantage and really will it to Morgan on the other tribe, really building a cross-tribal alliance that if he had been allowed to get to the swap, he could have made such a difference. I mean, Morgan was literally voted out right after him, really speaking to how much of a difference Jacob could have made if he was still in the game. But like Ben, production realized how big of a threat Jacob would have been if he had been allowed to get any further into the game. And thus, he was voted out second in the game. Had he been making it further, he would have made such a big impact. I mean, people talk about how Ghost Island is boring because Wendell and Dominic dominated that season. Just imagine if Jacob Durwin had been in their place. This season would have been an absolute steamroll, even more so than what Wendell and Dominic could have pulled off. Really speaks to how great of a player he is, has the drive to look for idols, has the foresight to know to go to Ghost Island before anyone else, and really played hard from the get-go. Can't do a list like this without him, and so I have Jacob here at number 7. Now we're moving on to number 6, and we have another legend of the game. We have Zac Knight from Survivor Philippines. And like Jacob, how can you do a list like this without him? Right away, he gets to work building alliances with everyone on the tribe, and we see the tribe fall in love with him. And considering the fact that he had just quit smoking shortly before the season started, he was able to hit the ground running, really chopping coconuts and doing what he can to build the shelter. Afterwards, he orchestrated the brilliant plan after losing the challenge of convincing people to vote him out, just so that he can then try to pull them back in, garner sympathy, and ensure their loyalty in the game. And it would have worked too, but like these other people we talked about, the people just wouldn't let him get any further, simply because he would have ran the table. He was already starting to run the table with his alliances with everyone and with his plan of garnering sympathy. It's just the fact that he was voted out first that really prevented his plan from coming through. It's really a shame that we didn't have more of Zac Knight on the season, as he would have been an incredible presence on the TV screen. But the fact that we saw him in that one episode gives us enough to make him another great player of the game. He is here at number 6. Now we're moving on to number 5, and we have another legend of the game coming from Survivor China. We have Chicken Morris. I mean, people talk about Todd, people talk about Amanda, people talk about James, but no one has ever talked about Chicken. And I think it's because people are scared of him. They know, and it kind of goes without saying, that he is a great player. Now, with a name like Chicken, he came into the game underestimated. People expected him to be this down to earth farmer that wouldn't treat this as a game at all. But Chicken understood more than anyone else the value of information. He knew that if he ran his mouth, people would have quickly disposed of him, sucked him of all the knowledge that he had, and then promptly tossed him. He needed to control the flow of information, which he did very effectively by withholding advice on building the shelter. It also meant that anytime he did open his mouth, people would actually listen to him. Chicken knew the key to communication, and he did it better than anyone else. Damn, that's genius. And by day 3, it was clear the game would be irreparably broken by Chicken staying around. More crucially, the producers needed to fill hour-long episodes with talking, and with Chicken knowing that nothing can happen if people don't talk, the episodes would have been very boring on Jong-Hoo. And so they had to pull him from the game as well so that we could have people running their mouths. And look how that turned out for Jong-Hoo. It's clear that Chicken was the greatest player to come out of that tribe. Really a legend. He is here at number 5. Now we're moving on to number 4, and people often confuse this person as being the worst player in Survivor history. And to those people, I think they're a bunch of idiots. Because here at number 4 from Survivor Nicaragua, we have Wendy Joe. And Wendy Joe, to me, is actually one of the greatest players to ever play. I mean, she was a bigger than life personality that came out there and knew that people wanted authenticity. People that lied, cheated, stole would have been outed immediately. And people like that never win Survivor. It's really people that are true to themselves that really shine and come out on top, because people like to vote for people they enjoy, people they think that are good people. And here we have Wendy Joe trying to break the mold, really trying to prove that good people can win this game. But at the end of the day, people don't like that, or at least from a TV perspective. The people at the TV station feel like if people like Wendy Joe got ahead, then she would have made it quote unquote boring. When in reality, I feel like she had the potential to do so well in the game, and it's crazy to see her being sniped out so soon. People just don't understand the game, and I feel like that's not Wendy Joe's fault at all. So because of that, I had to put her here at number 4. Really a great player. Now we're moving on to number 3, and I feel like this top 3 is really a pantheon of their own. We're really starting to get into the greats now, even better than all those people I just mentioned. But at number 3, we actually have the only returning player on this list, but here we have Francesca Hoagie, who played on Redemption Island and Caramoan. And I think Francesca played a brilliant game. She had so much potential that if people had just given her a chance, she would have shown them who was boss. We see that on Redemption Island, where she's able to build an alliance right away with Philip and Christina Kell. However, she was really screwed over by the fact that Boston Rob was on the season. And even Boston Rob, who, again, people think is a great player, I mean, I think he's a bit overrated, he knew that Francesca would have been a problem moving forward, even more so than the literal showmans happening on Ometepe with Andrea and Matt. She needed to nip that in the bud right away, prompting Francesca to be voted out, and the producers just went along with it because they designed Redemption Island specifically for Boston Rob to win, and they couldn't allow anyone to stand in her way. And then we get to Caramoan, where she once again hits the ground running. She's deemed a favorite, really speaking to how many people truly appreciate her gameplay and saw her potential. But again, she was screwed over by the fact that she had previously played on a season with Boston Rob, getting screwed over there, causing people to immediately assume that she should also be a first boot again. I guess some people just have a sick sense of humor, in my opinion, causing Francesca to once again be the first boot of the season, the only player in Survivor history to be a first boot twice. And to me, that is not her fault at all. It really speaks to how she never really got a chance to play. Again, she was on a season with Boston Rob, and that caused her second chance to be ruined once again. However, I feel like if she was placed on any given season, any season in which her involvement with Boston Rob wasn't a factor, then she easily dominates. She easily wins the season, in my personal opinion. I think the fact that she never got a second chance should not reflect poorly on her as a player. She really is a great player, in my opinion. She's the third best player in all of Survivor. Now we're moving on to number 2, and at this point in the list, we are now talking about players who are so good that even the people behind the show were scared in their boots of what they would have witnessed had this person got to play, and had to do something drastic before they could really ruin the game. But at number 2, we have from Survivor Palau, none other than Wanda. Now, I know Jonathan was also voted out, but honestly, Jonathan's just kind of okay. I mean, he's just your typical jock. He wouldn't have really done much. But Wanda captivated people with her amazing singing capabilities. She wowed the tribe with her constant energy, her constant music, her constant injection of energy. Survivor had never seen a player like this before, and they knew they had to do something about it. They were planning to do like a regular season with tribes being assigned normally. But then after seeing Wanda interact on Ponderosa before the season even started, they knew that they needed to change things up, prompting them to do the schoolyard pick, prompting it so that the 2 people left behind were going to be eliminated. And they literally told people to not pick Wanda because they knew that it would have made for bad TV if anyone was going to steamroll this game. And while Wanda is a fantastic character, they value gameplay more than anything else, as do a lot of people that listen to these types of videos. And so they had to eliminate Wanda. They forced them to eliminate Wanda. And it's a shame too, because I think she would have been an all-time great winner had she been given a fair shot. But it's just the reality that this is a TV show in which they had to care about ratings that causes Wanda and a lot of these other people to not get the shot that they deserve. And I feel like Wanda really epitomizes that. But I feel like there's one other player, someone even stronger than Wanda. And because of that, I sadly have to leave Wanda here at number 2. And now, at number 1, the greatest Survivor player to ever play really is someone who you probably never even heard of. This is someone who had so much potential, was so good strategically, socially, even physically, that they couldn't even let her on the show. And in fact, this person was even scared of what they could do to the show, causing them to not even play. And so, number 1, the greatest Survivor player ever is Melissa McNulty from Survivor Fiji. And Melissa is a very interesting case. She is the only person to be cast for the show, not as an alternate, but as a literal cast member, and then not even play the game at all. At least Wanda and Jonathan got to be on our TV screens for a certain amount of time, highlighting their capabilities to the players and giving the producers evidence that they couldn't be on the show due to a competitive disadvantage. But Melissa was the only person that whose capabilities were so blatant and so on display that they literally had to step in before the show could even start. They knew that Fiji wasn't going to be a Palau. They knew that, at least with Palau, while they did take the action with Wanda, they knew that they had people like Tom and Ian that could really pick up the slack and really make the game interesting while still giving people a shot. But considering this was Survivor Fiji, which had the likes of Lisi, Dreams, Yowman, Rocky, of all people, these were not the greats of the world. These people were not going to stand a chance against Melissa. And so they had to take preemptive action. And luckily for them, Melissa too was scared of what she was capable of. She knew that she would have steamrolled the season, but she knew that this would not have been fair to anyone. She knew there would have been no pride in beating up on a bunch of little kids, metaphorically speaking, And so she decided to pull out of the game in a coordination with the production team to ensure that Survivor Fiji could be a proper season of the show. And I think the fact that someone was that gifted at the game that they couldn't even be on the show without completely breaking the game speaks to how great they truly are as a player. And it is because of that that I consider Melissa McNulty the greatest Survivor player to ever be a part of this show. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And this was fun. I mean, I know that my channel is all about power rankings and talking about the current seasons of all these shows, but I think this was a very useful exercise for me to really look back at the show's history and really consider who the true greats are. And I'm glad that I could be able to reflect on some of the show's great moments. And I'm glad you could be there with me too. As usual, I will be returning to the usual stuff, but I do plan to make other videos like this in the future, so stay tuned for that. But for now, that is the video. See ya.